Welcome back to the Only Healthcare Podcast. I'm your co-host, Randy Vogenberg, and I'm here today with Winston Wong, which I think will be an interesting discussion about one of the new journals that's in the marketplace that's actually been around for quite a few years, the Journal of Clinical Pathways. So Winston, welcome to the podcast, and why don't you just introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I was previously the Associate Vice President of Pharmacy Management for a large regional Blues plan in the Mid-Atlantic area. My claim to fame and entry into the clinical pathways arena was helping to go and develop and implement a clinical pathway program in oncology, collaborating with our network oncologists. While clinical pathways has actually been in place with within the medical groups for a good number of years, we were the first plan to actually put together a collaborative effort with our network oncologists to put a clinical pathway program in. So to that end, a lot of people really associate me as being the great grandfather of clinical pathways in oncology. In that we did a lot of the early work. We learned a lot of things. We learned a lot of things we shouldn't have done, and a lot of people credit me for having paved the way to a lot of the programs that are out there today. My role with the Journal of Clinical Pathways is I am the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Clinical Pathways. I have the distinction of being the first and only editor-in-chief since 2015 with the inception of the Journal of Clinical Pathways. The first issue of the Journal of Clinical Pathways was in the September-October timeframe of 2015. Thus, we are marking this year as our 10-year anniversary. So as we take a look at clinical pathways, as I alluded to earlier, has been in use for well over 20 years. And over time, their scope has significantly evolved. What was once a tool to help guide treatment sequencing to decrease variability with the ultimate effort of trying to control costs has evolved into a necessary tool to help oncologists and practices meet their quality of life and financial goals. There should be no question that the oncology arena has grown significantly in terms of depth and complexity, where history will show that we have moved from general cytotoxic agents to today where we have medications targeting very specific physiological pathways.
Well, thanks for that introduction and a brief background on the journal. Part of my connection with the journal is currently sitting on the editorial advisory board since you recruited me to join in and help represent the employer perspective in addition to the clinical and some of the other health economic perspectives that the journal covers related to the clinical pathways. So one of the questions is I think about this particular journal compared to many of the other journals out there. As you mentioned, Clinical Pathways has been around for a long time. The Pathways Congress, which was just recently held in Boston, has been around for almost 20 years now. So they have an anniversary of sorts as well. But as we look at it, the historical perspective of pathways, what has been the biggest struggle as it began to move from just a pure clinical guideline or a clinical pathway strategy that clinicians could utilize?
I think the biggest struggle has been trying to go and determine just how comprehensive a pathway should be. If we take a look at a pathway, as I kind of mentioned, early in the years when we put our first pathway program together, it was merely just a treatment sequencing of medical, hematological, oncology type treatments. And sequencing in terms of trying to go and reduce variability and control our cost. Today, it's become much more than that, in that we have personalized medicine per se. And I can remember for the longest time, up to even a couple of years ago, there was a question of as to whether personalized medicine or genomic testing really belonged in a clinical pathway, because many thought that they were conflicting in that you have the treatment regimen sequence, but and then you have genomic um, testing that's going to be driving therapy. A lot of people could not go and fathom that you really can put genomic testing into the pathway, which will help drive your therapy decisions.
Yeah, that's particularly interesting given your managed care background. And as I look at employers, when you start looking at what we call clinical effectiveness, that intersection between the clinical care and the economics around that clinical care. And that's actually been a topic I know we've been discussing for the last couple of years on the editorial board as this whole arena really evolves to try and address where this is going to end up. So currently in the journal, what was it like in the early days? And I know that the journal has grown in terms of the number of academics as well as practitioners that has been submitting articles to be published in the journal, and also the variety of topics that has emerged that's covered by this
Yeah,
journal.
actually, that is one of the things that I am most proud of, because in the early days of the journal, we quite frankly did not have a clear vision as to what the journal should be, or what it or where it could go. Simply because I I could probably say we didn't really know. If you look at the journal from back in 2015 to where it is today, you can almost track the evolution of the journal just by looking at the taglines. Back in 2015, the Journal of Clinical Pathways was basically the foundation of value based care. Today, our tagline is advancing value based care. And really, that is where we have come from, in that we move from articles that were really focused on clinical pathway development and implementation to a much more comprehensive, structured approach, supporting both the clinical and the business side of oncology care, which is how you got recruited, because you're bringing in that business side from the employer standpoint. So this year, actually in 2020, at 2024, or towards the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. So as a result, yeah, as I mentioned, we are moving from a what used to be a very narrowed approach to a much broader approach in terms of clinical and the business approach to oncology care. And what the way the journal is handling that is that we have come up with 8 different categories in terms of articles that we are really trying to go and peg the articles into, as well as trying to go and recruit for these articles. In that we have a category for the prevention and diagnosis of cancer, the treatment of cancer, which is really the evaluation of the various treatment options and innovations, outcomes measurement, which we're trying to go and trying to go and gather articles based upon real world evidence and how that impacts decision making. The business side, infrastructure and innovation, where we talk about the integration of clinical pathways into the EMRs, development of multidisciplinary care teams, and the incorporation of artificial intelligence. We have the business aspect, which we had a major session in the last conference, for dealing with predictive cost modeling. And then we have the palliative care, end of life care. And then finally, something new that we are bringing into the journal is the prehabilitation of the patient, which is basically providing physical and psychological support to the patient, as well as the caregivers and the family, to prepare the patient for the rigorous treatment process of oncology care. In some respects, this is where we actually are probably going into the next realm of clinical pathways, as I mentioned earlier, bringing in the personalized medicine with the genomic profiling, I see the next aspect is really bringing in and addressing social disparities among oncology care so that we can provide a more comprehensive offering to our audience.
Yeah, there's so much today around whole person care, holistic care, and going beyond just the what we used to call traditional patient centered care, and tying that into the whole value proposition and the care journey, not just the care pathway, but the whole entire journey,
Right.
which brings in some of those social determinants of health, is what we used to call it. Uh, so yeah, it's good to see
Well,
the journal thinking about and moving slowly into that direction. I know one of the other things that came out in the conversation in Boston at the Congress was the potential for having the journal finally get indexed uh, in the National Library of Medicine.
that has actually been a goal for
What can
the
you say
last
around that at this point?
4 years, I can say. We actually started discussions prior to COVID. COVID came, so obviously that put us on hold for a couple of years. And then once 2022-23 kicked back in, we started that goal of trying to get indexed again. I think indexing is important. It gives indexing, most of all, gives the journal some credibility in terms of being a truly credible resource for clinical pathway information, as well as being able to go and allow the articles that are coming in to be searchable per se. Um, our belief is that once we become, if we can achieve the status of becoming an index journal, we will actually see more submissions coming in because, again, they're searchable, it's credible, and the authors that are out there can get some recognition for the work that they put in.
Yeah, I know, and you can confirm this, that not only is the journal a print publication,
That is
it's
correct.
also available online.
It's a free
And
registration.
there's a
You
website.
can go to the journalclinicalpathways.com, register, and you will have at your disposal the entire archive of Journal Clinical Pathways going back to the September-October issue of 2015.
Well, that's good for our audience to know that this is available. It's free access after you register, so
Yes.
it's easy to
And
do.
And
there's
once
a
you
lot of
register,
great
you also
information
get put onto
that could be
the
helpful.
the HMP Global Network, so that you actually get notices from HMP regarding various continuing education topics in terms of oncology care, as well as some of the other things that they do.
So, Winston, we've had a chance to kind of talk about the beginnings of the Journal of Clinical Pathways and where it's been headed over the last several years. What are some of your thoughts and insights about where JCP is headed in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
So that's a very good question. I think really what we're going to be trying to go and focus in on for 2026 is to go and build upon the momentum that we experienced from 2024 going into 2025. Our readership and our hit rates on our digital site really have taken off. They've exploded, which gives an indication that we're now being seen and we're now being trusted as the group that brings together the key opinion innovators and drivers of the clinical pathway arena. We saw that from the pillar perspective that we have for the focus topics, trying to go and identify which ones are really strong and driving that readership versus those which may be considered to be a nice to know type of topic. Basically, by increasing our readership, it'll lead us to our goal of trying to become indexed in 2026, which will definitely give the journal much more credibility that we've been needing over the past couple of years. I think once we become indexed, our articles and our pieces will be able to be seen through many of the search engines when people do their research. That'll truly put the journal into the credibility that other peer-reviewed journals have. So as we really go through the milestones, yes, we're going to try to continue the increase increasing our readership, increasing our hit rate, and the ultimate goal is to get indexed. In terms of where we go beyond that, it's going to simply be, I think, trying to go and change and evolve with the clinical pathways arena. As I mentioned in the history, clinical pathways at one time was just merely a sequencing of medical oncology regimens. Today, we are a vital tool for advancing value-based care. And depending upon a lot of what's going to happen over the next 5-10 years is really going to depend upon where value-based care goes. With the change in healthcare that's projected or potentially going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years, we at the Journal simply need to be focused on being able to go and be flexible and change with the times to remain relevant to the advancement of value-based care and quality outcomes.
So the last question I had, just from curiosity, is what kinds of collaboration, if any, happen across the different media platforms and publications that would touch on or around clinical pathways?
Frankly, that hasn't really been a topic. Each different journal that's out there, each different subsidiary per se of HMP has pretty much guided their own destiny, their own strategy per se. I can see in the future potentially that there would be a coming together of an integration simply because we are really trying to go and promote integrated care, multidisciplinary care. So if that's going to occur, there's no reason why there shouldn't be some type of integrated collaboration among the different journals and among the different subsidiaries that are out there. It's always been said, at least throughout my pharmacy training and experience, patients do not experience one specific condition. You can't treat diabetes as treating diabetes. You can't treat wound care as simply as wound care. Each one of these conditions have interlinks to other conditions, so that you got to treat the entire patient and not just treat the one symptom or condition per se. So in the future, I think there is the potential to integrate with other disciplines and other journals. However, for that to occur, there needs to be that acceptance that integration is definitely needed, and that the integration would be of benefit to the overall patient. I think conceptually we know that. However, to go and put that in terms of trying to have collaborations between different journals, that's a different story. And that's something possibly as a strategic goal we need to look at probably 10 to 20 years down the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think for today, then we'll leave it there. And thank you, Winston, for giving us some of the insights and information around the Journal of Clinical Pathways, which is celebrating its anniversary year, and also was featured at the latest Clinical Pathways Congress just held in Boston.
Yes.
As always, thanks to everyone for listening to our podcast, and you can follow us at theonlyhealthcarepodcast.com. Sign up and register, share with your colleagues, and we look forward to seeing you again on the Only Healthcare Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Only Healthcare Podcast. We hope you found today's episode insightful and informative. Remember, our mission is to provide actionable and inspirational insights on how we can improve healthcare cost, care, and accessibility for all. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and share with your friends and family. For more resources and updates, visit us at onlyhealthcarepodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what topics you'd like us to discuss in future episodes. Until next time, stay informed, and together, let's navigate the journey to better healthcare.